Welcome everyone to today's virtual class on trees and me. I'm Lara Milligan. I am the Natural Resources Agent for UF-IFAS Extension, Pinellas County. Today what we're going to go over is this idea of ecosystem services. So I called this program Trees and Me because ecosystem services sounds scary and complicated, and I'm going to try and make it not that way. So we're going to define what ecosystem services are. And these are the different types. These are kind of big words, but we're going to go through each of them so that you guys will better understand what they are and what they mean and why trees provide, and ecosystems in general, provide so much for us. So it's my hope that by the end of our presentation today, you'll be able to define what ecosystem services is and identify at least 5 benefits that we get from trees, which I bet you guys could do even right now. So, and just overall, when you look at trees, you'll see them a little bit differently. So first up is, what is an ecosystem service? And the most straightforward, it's not a really complicated definition, but it's any positive benefit, so any good thing that wildlife or ecosystems, so trees and all that make up a habitat, so the trees, the soil, the water, the wind, everything provides to people, to us. So what we get from nature just doing its thing. And so why should we care about this idea of ecosystem services? And that's because, as many of you probably know, development and what we call habitat destruction is a really big concern when it comes to not only trees, but wildlife as well. And so there's been a big effort by researchers and scientists to try and figure out how much is land worth? How do we put a dollar value on how much a tree is actually worth, so that when a developer comes in and wants to just knock down the land, we have a better understanding of the true value of that land. And so we'll talk about that at the very end. And then of course, right, something we don't really often think about, but essentially everything that we need and use every day of our daily lives comes from ecosystems existing and our natural resources. So we should be very thankful for Mother Nature. And this looks like a big scary image, but this, if you're like out of context, so this is the map of Florida on the top right, and then we're just zooming into the what we would call the Tampa Bay area. And this is Pinellas County on the far left, the little peninsula here, and you can see it's red, except for Lake Tarpon up at the top. And you guys, this key down at the bottom, you can see red is development. So Pinellas County is, we often say, very much developed out. It's about 98% developed out. We're the most densely populated county in the state. So there's a lot of people. And so what's left of our natural resources and our trees and our green spaces is very important. And we need to protect what is left. And another cool thing I'll point out, since this is where my office is, hopefully you guys can see my mouse, but this green area here is Brooker Creek Preserve, which is the largest remaining natural area in Pinellas County. So like I said, we're going to go through 4 different types of ecosystem services, and they are provisioning, regulating, cultural, and supporting. And again, I know some of these are bigger words, but we'll break them down for you. So, are you ready? Okay, so first up is provisioning services, which is just what we physically get from nature, what nature provides. So when you think of provisioning, just think of what nature provides that's tangible, or what can we actually touch. So, some examples of provisioning, things nature provides, is food, and this isn't all food, right? Trees don't provide all of the food that we need. But think like orange trees, apple trees. And this in general is talking about overall ecosystem services. On the next slide, I'll show you one specific for trees. So somebody mentioned food in the chat, so good job. Drinking water, somebody else mentioned water. Wood fuel, so fuel for keeping us warm and just fuel for general operations of different industries and equipment and machines. Natural gas, which fuels a lot of what we do every day, and oils as well. And then clothing, course, we all appreciate our clothing and other materials that we wear or utilize, and medicine, which is very, very important for health. So out of this list, trees provide, and I kind of alluded to some of these already. So food, yes, we can physically touch food. Wood, fuel, and that also goes for wood for building and construction, natural gas and oils, of course, clothing and other materials, and then medicine are all things that trees can provide to us as a provisioning service. And you guys, you know, it doesn't really necessarily, you don't have to say, oh, that's a provisioning service, but it just kind of helps us break down the different categories. So that's one type. The next one is regulating services. And when we think about regulating, especially maybe right now, we might be regulating our thermostat in our house because it's really hot outside, so we might be making it colder inside. And so think about the same thing with ecosystems. So this is processes that occur in nature that help moderate or regulate the environment in which we live. And some of you guys mentioned these before when I asked you for examples on the previous one. So examples of this is decomposition, right? That regulates, just so we don't have, without decomposition, we would just have a bunch of dead stuff that would stick around and cause all sorts of problems. Water purification, so it's regulating and filtering the water, which is very important for not only us for drinking water reasons, but also for the wildlife and animals. Erosion and flood control, somebody else mentioned that, so that's a very good one and a very, very important one. We often talk about this when we do talks up at Brooker Creek Preserve on guided hikes and talk about the importance of that big piece of natural area and all the water that Brooker Creek Preserve can hold that's not ending up in neighborhoods and flooding us out. And the preserve serves as a source of water purification. That water gets filtered from all the plants and vegetation that's there before it flows into Lake Tarpon. And so we're very, very grateful for that. And erosion control as well. So without trees, the roots of the trees, my hands are kind of disappearing with this background, but help to stabilize the soil. And so without the trees, if it rains, that soil can wash away a lot easier. And then carbon storage and climate regulation. So trees provide shade, right, which can help, especially right now. Again, it's really hot. So if you have a lot of trees around your house, you might not have to use your AC as much. In certain areas where there's really cold winds, it can help and serve as a wind block and regulate the temperature that way. And then carbon storage, so is really, really important. If you've heard and understand the concept with climate change and increasing levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, we don't want that. And so trees help, they lock in that carbon inside and keep it there instead of out in the atmosphere, which is a very important role. And so out of those, which ones trees and shrubs provide is the bottom three. So I talked about the water purification, erosion and flood control, and the carbon storage and climate regulation. Okay, so next up, so this is what's on your screen is like the fancy definition, but I break it down on the next slide. But for the adults that are watching, it's, when we talk about cultural services, this is the non-material benefits that contribute to the development and cultural advancement of people. So here we're not talking about the tangible stuff you can touch, but what we can't touch, but get benefits from when it comes to nature, and especially as it relates to us and our activities. So again, what nature provides us that we can't touch, but we can enjoy. And so often we think about cultures, and if you guys are familiar with other cultures around the world and just the value and importance that they put on our natural resources and the trees and the water and the land. So there's just all foundations, certain groups of people, this is like the foundation of their whole living daily lives. Building of knowledge, we learn a lot from nature and continue to do so, and we often mimic even construction and different things that we build, we mimic from nature because nature does such a good job at it. And so we look to nature for those ideas. Creativity in general, that can come in the form of music and art, and I alluded to this already, but architecture, recreation, which I'm sure we're all coming to appreciate this time of year, or especially with COVID right now, just getting out and having the opportunity to recreate. I think we've all probably come to appreciate that a lot more now. And just the general aesthetics. If you think about maybe a neighborhood you walk through or can run through, if you have a neighborhood that maybe lacks trees and doesn't have as much vegetation versus one that might have these big mature oaks and looks really pretty, you're going to be much more, hopefully, drawn towards the one with the big trees and the nice shade. It just has a better feel to it, and you're more attracted to it. So aesthetics is just a fancy word of saying pretty or beautiful. And then which of these do trees and shrubs provide? It's all of them. So really without the ecosystems and the trees, these things would not be possible. Okay, and then the last one is supporting services, and this one's a little bit hard to understand, but it's basically what nature does that helps to support all of those other services that we talked about. So things like photosynthesis, right? That's something that plants do so that they can grow and thrive. And nutrient cycling. So if you guys have learned about all the different cycles, there's the carbon cycle, and then we refer down here, there's the water cycle, there's the nitrogen cycle. So these things that occur that just help life in terms of plants and animals to happen. And then as a result of these, we get all of these benefits. Creation of soils is another one. Soils are, right, the foundation for everything. You couldn't have trees standing up if there wasn't soil for them to grow on. So supporting services just help, it's things that occur naturally that help to make all of those other services that we talked about possible. I bet you guys all at least know about the water cycle. And I do hope to do a really fun virtual class on the water cycle here coming up in the next couple weeks. So stay tuned for that. And so which of those do we think trees and shrubs provide? So yeah, most of them. So photosynthesis, of course, trees do that, or they wouldn't be existing. Nutrient cycling, so they're helping with the right part of the carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle, the water cycle. Trees play a big part in the water cycle, which hopefully you guys have learned about in school, the idea of transpiration. If not, we'll learn about that. Hopefully when I do my next, not my next, but one coming up on a virtual class on the water cycle. And so, I know that was kind of quick. Visioning, regulating, cultural, and supporting. Again, that's not as important to remember those big terms as it is just to think about all the different things that trees and ecosystems in general provide to us. So as a reminder, provisioning is what nature provides, the physical things we can touch. So food, water, fuel or building materials, our clothing and medicine. And then regulating all the things that nature does to help just keep it a livable environment for us. So flood control, erosion control, climate control. Cultural is all the things that we get to enjoy that we can't physically touch. So just being out and recreating, enjoying the beauty, learning from nature, which hopefully we're all doing this time and you're doing right now as joining in with this webinar. And then the supporting is, you know, ecosystems themselves could not be could not exist without these underlying processes. So, and that was things like photosynthesis, the water cycle, nutrient cycling, and things like that. Hopefully, you got a few tidbits of things you might not have thought about that trees do for us as a result of this class. I will share these links with you guys in the follow-up email, but this is where I got a lot of my information from the National Wildlife Federation, and then the Environmental Protection Agency has some good resources on ecosystem services as well. And later this week, I'm going to be helping you guys to use this really cool tool. I encourage you to check it out between now and Friday. If you just go to treebenefits.com, it brings you to this National Tree Benefits Calculator. You have to enter in your zip code, and then it asks you, it's basically a way for you to find out all the ecosystem services and the dollar value of them for a particular tree. So hopefully one in your yard or your neighborhood. So it asks you, you have to enter the tree species. So I did a class on how to identify your tree. So I can help you guys identify your tree if you need help with that part. But what I'm going to be showing you guys on Friday is the tree diameter and how to measure a tree's diameter. So that'll be fun. Another short little video I'm going to do for you guys. And then just the type of neighborhood or where the tree is located that you want to measure. So this is a really fun activity that you guys can do at home. I appreciate you all tuning in. And